Marcus Thompson stood in line at the Department of Veterans Affairs office, his worn leather jacket concealing decades of military service as afternoon sunlight filtered through dusty windows. The 68-year-old black veteran clutched his appointment confirmation letter, watching younger veterans move through the security checkpoint with practiced efficiency. "Sir, step forward," the security guard barked, his tone sharp with unnecessary aggression. Marcus moved toward the metal detector with the measured pace of someone whose knees carried the weight of too many parachute jumps and combat deployments. The security guard, a heavy-set white man in his 30s named Derek Collins, looked Marcus up and down with unconcealed disdain. His nameplate gleamed under the fluorescent lights as he gestured impatiently toward the X-ray machine. "Empty your pockets, everything," Collins commanded, his voice carrying across the crowded waiting area. Several people looked up from their phones, sensing tension in the air. Marcus complied silently, placing his keys, wallet, and phone in the plastic bin. His movements were deliberate, controlled, the muscle memory of military discipline evident in every gesture. "What's this?" Collins grabbed Marcus's wallet and flipped it open without permission, examining the contents with theatrical suspicion. "You got any weapons on you, old man?" "No, sir," Marcus replied quietly, his voice carrying the soft authority of someone who had commanded respect through actions rather than volume. "I'm just here for my appointment." Collins smirked and tossed the wallet back into the bin carelessly. "Yeah, well, we get a lot of people claiming they're veterans. You'd be surprised how many frauds try to scam the system." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Several veterans in the waiting area shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the racial undertones in Collins's treatment of the elderly black man. "I served my country for 32 years, Marcus said evenly, maintaining his composure despite the humiliation. "I have every right to be here." Collins's expression hardened. "Don't get mouthy with me. I don't care how old you are. You follow my procedures or you don't get in. Understand?" Marcus nodded, refusing to give Collins the confrontation he seemed to be provoking. He stepped through the metal detector, which remained silent. No alarms, no weapons, nothing to justify Collins's aggressive behavior. But Collins wasn't finished. "Hold up. I need to do a manual search. Spread your arms and legs." "Sir, that's not necessary," Marcus protested gently. "The detector didn't go off." "I decide what's necessary," Collins shot back, his voice rising. "You refusing a lawful security procedure, because I can have you removed from this facility right now." The waiting area had gone completely silent. Dozens of veterans watched the confrontation unfold, some with anger in their eyes, others with the weary recognition of people who had witnessed similar treatment before. Marcus spread his arms, allowing Collins to conduct an unnecessarily aggressive pat-down that was clearly designed to humiliate rather than ensure security. Collins's hands were rough, invasive, his movements calculated to demean. "Where'd you serve?" Collins asked with obvious skepticism as he completed the search. "What unit?" "Multiple deployments," Marcus replied quietly. "Special forces, primarily Southeast Asia and Central America. Later assignments classified." Collins laughed mockingly. "Special forces. Sure you were. Let me guess, you were also a general and a war hero, right?" The sarcasm was thick, deliberate. Several veterans in the waiting area looked disgusted by Collins's treatment of the elderly man, but no one intervened. This was a VA facility. Collins had authority here. "I never claimed to be a hero," Marcus said with quiet dignity. "I just did my job like thousands of other soldiers." Collins grabbed Marcus's appointment letter and examined it with exaggerated scrutiny. "Marcus Thompson, appointment with Dr. Richardson at 2:30. He glanced at the wall clock. "You're early. Go sit down and wait until you're called, and next time show some respect to security personnel." Marcus collected his belongings and moved toward the seating area, his back straight despite the humiliation. He had faced enemy fire, survived impossible missions, and commanded elite military units. But in this moment, he was just another old black man being disrespected by someone who saw only his skin color and age. He found a seat near the window, away from the crowd, and tried to steady his breathing. The encounter had rattled him more than he wanted to admit. After everything he had sacrificed for his country, this was how he was treated. A young Hispanic veteran sitting nearby leaned over quietly. "Sir, that was completely out of line." Everyone here saw what he did to you." Marcus nodded but didn't respond. He had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting, that dignity sometimes meant knowing when to stay silent. What Marcus didn't know was that the entire encounter had been captured by the VA facility's security cameras. And what neither Marcus nor Collins knew was that a three-star general was scheduled to visit the facility that afternoon for an unannounced inspection of veteran services. The waiting area gradually returned to its normal rhythm of quiet conversations and shuffling papers. Marcus pulled out a worn paperback and tried to focus on reading, but Collins's mocking voice kept echoing in his mind. "Special Forces? Sure you were." 20 minutes passed. Then the main entrance doors opened, and a group of military officers entered the facility, their dress uniforms crisp and decorated with ribbons and medals. At the center of the group was Lieutenant General Patricia Morrison, a stern-faced woman in her 50s whose reputation for demanding excellence and accountability was legendary throughout the military. General Morrison was conducting surprise inspections of VA facilities across the region, evaluating how veterans were being treated and whether security protocols were being followed appropriately. She had seen too many reports of veterans being mistreated at the very facilities designed to serve them. Collins snapped to attention when he saw the military brass entering his checkpoint, his earlier arrogance replaced by nervous formality. "Good afternoon, General. Welcome to our facility." General Morrison nodded curtly, her sharp eyes scanning the security setup with professional assessment. "At ease. I'm here for an unannounced inspection. I want to review your security procedures and observe how veterans are being processed." Collins swallowed hard. "Of course, General, we maintain the highest standards here, very professional operation." Morrison's aide, a young captain carrying a tablet, pulled up the security camera footage from the past hour. The general had learned that the best way to evaluate facility operations was to review recent interactions before announcing her presence. "Show me your most recent veteran processing," Morrison commanded, her tone leaving no room for discussion. Collins hesitated, suddenly remembering his treatment of Marcus. We've had a quiet afternoon, General. Nothing unusual to report." "Then it should be easy to review the footage," Morrison replied, her expression hardening. "Captain Andrews, pull up the last hour of security checkpoint recordings." The captain tapped his tablet, and the footage appeared on a nearby monitor. Morrison watched in silence as the scene unfolded, Collins's aggressive treatment of Marcus captured in perfect detail. Her expression grew darker with each passing second. "Who is that veteran?" Morrison asked quietly, her voice carrying the dangerous calm of a senior officer witnessing unacceptable behavior. "Just a walk-in appointment, ma'am," Collins stammered. "Standard security screening." "Standard?" Morrison's voice rose slightly. "That looked like harassment to me. You conducted an unnecessary manual search after the detector showed no alerts. You handled his personal property with disrespect, and your tone was completely inappropriate for addressing a veteran seeking services." Collins's face went pale. "Ma'am, I was just following security protocols." "Don't lie to me, Collins." Morrison stepped closer, her presence commanding despite being several inches shorter than the security guard. "I've reviewed security protocols for every VA facility in this region. Nothing in those protocols authorizes the treatment I just witnessed." She turned to her aide. "Captain Andrews, I want that veteran's name and service record pulled immediately, and I want him located in this facility right now." The captain worked quickly, cross-referencing the appointment schedule with the security footage timestamp. "Ma'am, the veteran is Marcus Thompson. He has a 2:30 appointment with Dr. Richardson. According to our database, he's still in the waiting area." "Pull his complete service record," Morrison ordered. "I want to know who we just watched being humiliated in a VA facility." Captain Andrews' expression changed dramatically as information populated his screen. His eyes widened and he looked up at the general with obvious shock. "Ma'am, you need to see this." Morrison took the tablet and began reading. Her jaw tightened as she scrolled through page after page of Marcus Thompson's military record. 32 years of service, multiple tour in Vietnam, Special Forces operations in Central America, classified missions throughout the Cold War, 3 silver stars, 2 bronze stars with valor, Purple Heart with oak leaf clusters, Distinguished Service Cross. The record went on, detailing a military career that read like a history of American military operations spanning 3 decades. Marcus Thompson wasn't just a veteran. He was a living legend, whose service record was still partially classified due to the sensitive nature of his Special Forces operations. Collins watched the general's expression shift from anger to something approaching fury. He had no idea what was on that screen, but he knew his career was about to end. "This veteran," Morrison said quietly, her voice trembling with controlled rage, "has more combat experience than everyone in this building combined. He served in some of the most dangerous operations in American military history. He trained soldiers who went on to become generals, and you treated him like a criminal." "Ma'am, I didn't know," Collins began, but Morrison cut him off with a gesture. "You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't care. You saw an elderly black man and made assumptions based on nothing but prejudice and disrespect." She handed the tablet back to Captain Andrews. "Take me to Marcus Thompson immediately. And Collins, you're suspended pending a full investigation. Security badge and credentials, now." Collins fumbled with his badge, his hands shaking as he handed over his identification. His career in VA security was over, destroyed by his own arrogance and racism. General Morrison and her entourage moved through the facility toward the waiting area where Marcus sat reading his book, unaware that his entire life was about to change again. The general paused at the entrance to the waiting area, studying Marcus from a distance. He sat with the quiet dignity of someone who had nothing left to prove, his worn jacket and simple demeanor hiding a military record that most soldiers could only dream of achieving. "Captain Andrews," Morrison said softly, "when I approach that veteran, I want you to document everything. This is going to become a training case for how VA facilities should treat our nation's heroes." The waiting area fell silent as General Morrison entered, her 3-star insignia immediately recognizable to the veterans present. Several stood at attention instinctively, military training overriding civilian context. "As you were," Morrison said gently, gesturing for them to sit. But her eyes were locked on Marcus Thompson, who had looked up from his book with mild curiosity. She approached him directly, her posture shifting from commanding officer to something approaching reverence. The entire waiting area watched in confusion as a 3-star general stopped in front of an elderly veteran and came to attention. Marcus looked up, confused by the sudden attention. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Morrison's voice carried throughout the silent waiting area. "Are you Marcus Thompson, retired Sergeant Major, United States Army Special Forces?" Marcus stood slowly, his military bearing returning instinctively. "Yes, ma'am, that's correct." What happened next would be talked about in military circles for years to come. Lieutenant General Patricia Morrison, a 3-star general with 28 years of distinguished service, rendered a perfect military salute to the elderly black veteran standing before her. The waiting area erupted in gasps. Veterans scrambled to their feet. Even civilian staff members stopped what they were doing to witness the extraordinary moment. Marcus, caught completely off guard, returned the salute with the precision of someone whose muscle memory retained decades of military protocol. His hand was steady, his posture straight despite his age. "Sergeant Major Thompson," Morrison said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "on behalf of the United States Army and every service member who has benefited from your training, leadership, and sacrifice, I apologize for the disrespectful treatment you received in this facility today." The crowd was stunned into complete silence. This was unprecedented. A 3-star general publicly apologizing to a veteran in a VA waiting room. "Ma'am," Marcus began, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "That's not necessary." "It is absolutely necessary," Morrison replied firmly. "I have reviewed your service record, Sergeant Major. Your contributions to our nation's defense are extraordinary. The way you were treated today was a disgrace to everything this facility is supposed to represent." She turned to address the entire waiting area, her voice carrying the authority of command. "This veteran served our nation for 32 years in some of the most dangerous operations in American military history. He trained soldiers who went on to lead our finest units. He earned 3 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor, a Distinguished Service Cross, and multiple Purple Hearts. And today, he was humiliated by security personnel who judged him based on his appearance rather than his service." The crowd broke into spontaneous applause. Several veterans approached Marcus, wanting to shake his hand or simply be near someone whose service record commanded such respect from a three-star general. Morrison continued, her voice growing stronger. Every person in this facility exists to serve our veterans, not to judge them or treat them with anything less than the respect they have earned through their sacrifice. What happened to Sergeant Major Thompson today will result in immediate policy changes and mandatory training for all VA security personnel. She turned back to Marcus, her expression softening. Sergeant Major, I would be honored if you would allow me to personally ensure you receive the medical care and services you came here for today. And I want to invite you to speak at our Regional Military Leadership Conference next month. Young officers need to hear from veterans like you. Marcus was overwhelmed. In the span of 20 minutes, he had gone from being humiliated by a security guard to being honored by a three-star general in front of dozens of witnesses. Ma'am, he said quietly, I just came here for a routine medical appointment. I never expected any of this. I know you didn't, Morrison replied with a slight smile. That's what makes you a true soldier, Sergeant Major. You don't seek recognition. You just serve with dignity and honor, expecting nothing in return. She gestured to Captain Andrews. The captain has your service record, and I've already contacted the VA regional director. You will receive priority scheduling for all your medical needs, and I'm personally reviewing your benefits package to ensure you're receiving everything you've earned. Marcus nodded, still processing the surreal turn of events. Thank you, General. That means more than you know. Morrison placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of respect between warriors. Thank you, Sergeant Major, for your service, your sacrifice, and for maintaining your dignity even when you were treated poorly. You represent the very best of what it means to be a soldier. The waiting area erupted in applause again as other veterans lined up to shake Marcus's hand, introduce themselves, and thank him for his service. Men and women who had been strangers minutes before now gathered around him like he was visiting royalty. A young Marine veteran, no more than 25, approached with tears in his eyes. Sir, my drill instructor used to tell us stories about the old-school Special Forces operators who trained him. Were you one of those guys? Marcus smiled gently. I might have trained a few Marines in my time. You boys always were the toughest students. The young Marine snapped to attention and saluted. Thank you for paving the way for soldiers like me, sir. As the crowd continued to gather around Marcus, General Morrison pulled Captain Andrews aside. I want a full investigation into Derek Collins and his employment history. I want to know if there are other veterans he's treated this way. And I want mandatory respect and anti-discrimination training implemented at every VA facility in this region within 30 days. Yes, ma'am, the captain replied, taking notes rapidly. And Collins's suspension. Make it permanent, Morrison said coldly. He demonstrated complete disrespect for a veteran whose service record should inspire reverence. He has no place in any facility that serves our military personnel. She watched Marcus interact with the crowd of veterans, his natural humility and grace evident in every gesture. This is what leadership looks like, she said to her aide. Sergeant Major Thompson could have demanded recognition. He could have pulled rank on that security guard. Instead, he maintained his dignity and composure even while being humiliated. That's the mark of a true professional soldier. Morrison approached Marcus again as the crowd began to disperse. Sergeant Major, I meant what I said about speaking at our leadership conference. We have young officers who need to understand that leadership isn't about rank or authority. It's about character and service. You embody those qualities. Marcus considered the invitation carefully. Ma'am, I'm not much for public speaking. I'm just an old soldier who did his job. That's exactly why your voice matters, Morrison replied. The military needs to hear from veterans like you, not the politicians or the generals who write memoirs. The soldiers who served quietly, professionally, and with honor. That's the real story of American military service. She handed him her personal business card. This is my direct line. Call me when you're ready to talk about the conference. And Sergeant Major, if you ever experience disrespect at any military or VA facility again, you contact me immediately. That's an order. Marcus smiled at her use of military terminology. Yes, ma'am, I'll do that. As General Morrison and her entourage prepared to leave, she addressed the waiting area one final time. To every veteran here today, You have my commitment that the treatment Sergeant Major Thompson received will never happen again in any facility under my oversight. You served our nation with honor. You deserve to be treated with honor in return." The crowd stood and applauded as the general departed, her message clear and unambiguous. The era of disrespecting veterans was over, at least in facilities where she held authority. Marcus finally made it to his medical appointment, where Dr. Richardson greeted him with obvious respect. Word had spread throughout the facility about the confrontation and the general's intervention. "Mr. Thompson," the doctor said warmly, "I heard what happened today. I want you to know that doesn't represent how we feel about our veterans here." "I appreciate that, Doc," Marcus replied. "Let's just focus on why I'm here, shall we?" The medical appointment proceeded smoothly, but Marcus's mind kept returning to the morning's events. In his 68 years, he had experienced racism, discrimination, and disrespect more times than he could count. But he had also witnessed moments of grace, like General Morrison's public acknowledgement of his service. As he left the facility several hours later, Marcus noticed that Derek Collins's security station had been taken over by a young female veteran with a prosthetic leg. She smiled warmly as he approached the exit. "Have a good evening, Sergeant Major," she said respectfully. "Thank you for your service." Marcus paused, surprised that she knew his rank. "Word travels fast around here, huh?" She grinned. "Sir, what happened today is already legendary. You're a hero to every veteran in this facility." "I'm no hero," Marcus replied gently. "Just a soldier who got treated poorly and happened to have a general nearby who cared enough to do something about it." "That makes you a hero in my book, sir," she insisted. "Most people would have just accepted the disrespect and moved on. You stood your ground with dignity." Marcus nodded and headed toward the parking lot, his worn leather jacket concealing the service record that had stunned a 3-star general. He had come to the VA for a routine medical appointment. He was leaving as an inspiration to every veteran who had witnessed the day's extraordinary events. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood at the podium of the Regional Military Leadership Conference, facing an audience of over 200 officers ranging from lieutenants to colonels. General Morrison had personally introduced him, sharing highlights from his service record that left the audience in respectful silence. Now, as he looked out at the sea of uniforms, Marcus felt the weight of representing not just himself, but every veteran who had served quietly and with honor. "I'm not here to tell you war stories," he began, his voice steady. "I'm here to talk about something more important: respect, dignity, and remembering why we serve." The audience leaned forward, captivated by the elderly veteran whose service record read like military history. "A few weeks ago, I was treated poorly at a VA facility by a security guard who judged me based on my appearance rather than my service. He saw an old black man and made assumptions. He didn't see a soldier. He didn't see 32 years of service. He just saw someone he felt entitled to disrespect." Marcus paused, letting his words sink in. "But here's what I want you to understand as leaders. That security guard's behavior wasn't just about me. It was about a culture that sometimes forgets that every veteran, regardless of age, race, or appearance, has earned respect through their service." He looked directly at General Morrison, who sat in the front row. When General Morrison intervened, she didn't just correct one security guard's behavior. She sent a message that respect for veterans is non-negotiable. That's leadership. That's what command authority should look like. The audience burst into applause. Morrison nodded appreciatively, recognizing that Marcus understood the broader implications of her actions. "As officers and future leaders," Marcus continued, "you will have countless opportunities to either perpetuate disrespect or demand accountability. Choose accountability. Choose respect. Choose to see the humanity and service in every veteran who crosses your path." He spoke for 20 minutes, sharing lessons from decades of military service, emphasizing dignity, respect, and the responsibility that comes with leadership. When he finished, the audience gave him a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. General Morrison approached him as he stepped down from the podium. "Sergeant Major, that was exactly what these officers needed to hear. You've done more for military culture in 20 minutes than most leadership courses accomplish in weeks." Marcus smiled humbly. "I just told them the truth, ma'am. Leadership is about character, not rank." As word spread about Marcus's speech and the VA incident, Other facilities began implementing mandatory respect training for all personnel who interacted with veterans. Derek Collins became a cautionary tale, his name synonymous with the kind of behavior that would no longer be tolerated in facilities serving those who had served. Marcus returned to his quiet life, but he now received regular invitations to speak at military events, veteran gatherings, and leadership conferences. His story had become a powerful reminder that respect for service transcends rank, age, or appearance. 6 months after the incident, Marcus received a letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Inside was a formal apology from the VA secretary, along with notification that new policies had been implemented across all VA facilities nationwide. The Marcus Thompson Protocol, as it became known, mandated respectful treatment of all veterans and established clear consequences for personnel who failed to meet those standards. Marcus framed the letter and hung it in his home office, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that one moment of standing firm in dignity had created lasting change for countless veterans who would never know his name. He thought about Derek Collins occasionally, wondering if the disgraced security guard had learned anything from the experience. But mostly, Marcus focused on the positive. The young veterans who reached out to thank him, the policy changes that would protect others, and the general who had cared enough to intervene. In the end, Marcus Thompson's story wasn't about one man's humiliation or redemption. It was about the power of accountability, the importance of respecting service, and the reality that heroes don't always wear their medals on their chest. Sometimes they wear worn leather jackets and carry their dignity quietly, waiting for the moment when truth demands to be recognized.